go ahead, take a deep breath, pull it in, hold, and let it out. You're here today to develop and strengthen your mindset because you know that weekly training sessions in mindfulness is the missing link the world is searching for when it comes to business success. So set aside the external logistical side of business growth and come with me now to a world of focus, purpose, calm, confidence, and personal power using NLP and CBT tools and techniques. I am your host, Leah Marie, and you're listening to Flip the Switch. You guys, this is going to be so fun. Today's topic is one I love and work inside of consistently with my clients. Now, you know that in my coaching practice, Master of Me, I work with A to C level entrepreneurs to remove repetitive, unwanted thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Now, I do this using CBT and NLP, but did you know that I also work to create wanted repetitive thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that lead those influencers to their next level? Well, if you didn't, now you know. And today you're in for a treat because we're going to jump into one of my favorite topics. Yep, we're talking habits. I've got a couple of stories for you, along with the answer to why habit change sometimes feels impossible, and a surprising twist that will have you realizing it's totally doable. So stick with me through to the end. You know the drill. Okay, so let's get started. Habits, well, we love them and we kind of hate them. They're really quite a funny thing. For example, a seemingly insignificant task like brushing your teeth, a small act done over and over, twice a day, in fact, for most of us at least. Okay, so I own 2 toothbrushes, a vibrating electric brush recommended by my sister-in-law who is a hygienist, and I also have a hand-powered simple scrub brush. Now, you would think that I only use the handheld one for road trips because that would make sense, right? However, you would be wrong. Even though I know the electric brush does a better job, I would repeatedly reach for the handheld brush. Why? 2 reasons. 1, because it's just faster. And 2, because I hated that feeling and the discomfort that it would always make my nose itchy when I used the vibrating one. Now, when I said it's faster, what I mean by that is that the electric brush had that 2-minute buzz that I had to wait for in order to know that I had been brushing my teeth long enough. The interesting thing is that when I just brushed my teeth on my own, there was no time limit that was telling me when I was done. Instead, I couldn't be knowing and feel justified and happy because, hey, my breath was fresh and my mouth still felt clean. Therefore, it was good enough. At least that was the thought process. So what do we learn so far from this story? Number 1, I had 2 options. A toothbrush that I know would do a better job, but gave me discomfort and was a little annoying in a sense because I like to get things done and it was too slow for me. And number 2, we learn that there is something in my belief system that allows me to pick the toothbrush that is faster and does a job that is good enough. And that belief is strong enough that I'm going to choose that option over and over again instead of taking the better option, which is going to leave me with better results all around in oral health. We're going to jump back into the story a little bit later and see where that belief came from, but I want you to just stop for a second and recognize that I was making an unconscious decision over and over and over again, basically out of something being more comfortable and being faster. Interesting, right? So how do we see habits? What are our thoughts about creating or breaking habits? Well, I can tell you that what I hear out there is that habits are hard to break. Habits are hard to create. Now, I'm curious, do you agree or do you disagree? It is really fascinating to discuss these 2 thoughts, especially when you get opposing responses. Oh, it's so juicy. Okay, so let's look at this idea of why we stumble and fall or trip over our habits with frustration, disappointment, and exhaustion. Let's step away from the toothbrush story and look at this kind of weird question. Have you ever drawn back on an elastic band to see how far you can pull before it snaps back into place? Sometimes a little painful, I know. This is, though, the perfect analogy to describe what happens in our minds when we try to break an old habit or start a new habit. You see, we have our regular comfort zone of what feels safe and secure and normal for us, which is the normal shape of the elastic band. When we try to start something new or stop something that is out of our regular, normal, everyday life, it's like stretching that elastic band, and we will see some great progress. Now, this is something that is really easy to see when we're starting a new habit. We are excited, we put all the pieces in place, and we start seeing results, and we're so excited, and we start doing really, really well. And then, for some reason, it starts to get hard. And it's kind of like the tension on the elastic band is getting really tight. What's happening subconsciously is that our minds are starting to go, wait a second, this isn't a fad. She's actually trying to change us, okay? What has worked in the past has kept us safe. It's kept us alive. It's time to freak out now. And essentially, it flings us back to where we originally were. So that's like self-sabotage. It's kind of that space where we then beat ourselves up and we feel frustrated and we're like, why did I fail at this? Everything was going so well. And we don't really understand how this happened when we were having really good results. Now, one of the things to mention here as well is that when this happens, we don't usually come right back to the shape we were. We kind of go backwards a little bit first, and then we kind of settle back into our regular shape. So I don't know if you've ever noticed that with an elastic band, but you pull back, it slingshots and kind of wobbles around a little bit before you're able to kind of get your footing back to what's normal. Let's go in and figure out a little bit more about what is happening here and recognize that literally it's really not your fault. In fact, it's supposed to be that way and it's helping you. So the majority of our habits are in place because at some time in our life, we found an easier or more comfortable way of doing something that fulfilled a need. They work in most cases as our security system, protecting us from pain or discomfort, whether physical, emotional, mental, or otherwise. We all have them. Even the good ones are in place to protect us from the consequences we believe will come if we don't take the actions. So when we look at our habits and we think, okay, like brushing our teeth, if we don't want to lose our teeth, we don't want them to rot or decay, we don't want the other health problems that stem from poor oral health care. We don't want the bad breath or taste or texture of an unclean mouth, not to mention the social ramifications or our relationships with our family or a significant other, right? So we have healthy habits of brushing our teeth because we don't want the results of what would happen without it. Now, some would say that I'm creating this good habit because I want the great results that come from it. However, human nature teaches us that we as human beings will do more and work harder to get away from pain than we will to get towards something of a good or comfortable nature. Now, this, of course, works the opposite, where we have negative habits because we get some sort of other area of a comfort zone inside of that. So you're starting to see how this all works, aren't you? Let's take a second to look at another way to see this. Recognizing that whatever habits you have in place were lovingly set there by your subconscious to protect you. Yes, even the bad ones, the ones you started in order to either fit in or be accepted. And at one time or another, you also created really good habits like the brushing the teeth or the exercising at the gym in order to stave off the negative consequences. So either way, we're pretty much trying to keep ourselves in a safety zone of comfort. Like, for example, for me, it's more uncomfortable to have the consequences of an unclean mouth than it is to just stop and brush my teeth. Okay, so either way, our subconscious is doing an amazing job with this security system. So don't beat yourself up over good and bad habits and all of that stuff. Just recognize that you're freaking rocking it when it comes to the security system on the subconscious. How do we see it differently, and how do we leverage this new info to work for us? Let's first take a look at truth behind habits. So here's how I would jump into and describe the truth area when it comes to habit formation or breaking, okay? There is an indisputable connection between our beliefs and our behaviors or our habits. We will only ever act on a thought if it can pass through the filters of our fundamental beliefs. Now, let me just say that again. We will only ever act on a thought if it can pass through the filters of our fundamental beliefs. So what this means is that you and I will only act upon a thought that we have already agreed or assumed to be true. So you can see that it's our beliefs that fuel our thoughts, which in turn trigger our emotions and feelings, which we know plays out in our actions and thus our results in life. Here's an important note. There is no magic to changing habits or behaviors. Anyone, yes, anyone, I hope you're listening to this, with the understanding and the tools can change their life circumstances with habit-changing behaviors. The key and the part that makes it seem magical is understanding how we are individually wired, and then taking that knowledge and using the right tools and strategies like the ones I use with my clients and teach them to use to change the connections in their mindset and flip the switch. Okay, so let's just circle back for a second. Let's wrap this together and look at the story that I chose at the beginning. Okay, just a side note though, I was able to reverse this habit, and yes, I do use the electric toothbrush. So back on track. When we look at this example, how often are we justifying the "it's good enough" statement in life, and how does that leave us in control? Are we in control, or are we at the expense of whatever the outcome is from the choices we made? I don't pick the consequences. You don't pick the consequences. So you're right, it doesn't leave us in control. You may be curious to find out what belief I found laying underneath the story of the toothbrush. So here it is. For as long as I can remember, my dad would always say, if it's a job worth doing, it's worth doing right. Now, here's the clincher. He always said that when we were working on big projects like stacking firewood, raking the massive front lawn at my parents' house, or cleaning out the chicken coop. Thankfully, that one was usually given to one of my brothers. But I think you can see where this is going. To this day, if I were to stack a wood pile, you can bet that it would be tight and strong, all the pieces fitting together like a puzzle. I developed a belief for larger projects, particularly those of physical labor, and the expectations that went with them. Now, on the other hand, my mom, although particular about crafty projects and cooking, she often had a good enough attitude towards small, menial tasks, which I believe fit into my teeth brushing or toothbrushing, however you want to say it. So the question that I have for you and want you to ponder on today is, what habits do you have that aren't serving you? And are you willing to start the process of removal by tracking the origin? You need to be able to know what the belief system is underneath the action. Just like I realized with my parents, and then was able to shift once I realized why I was doing what the heck I was doing. Now, I really want you guys to join me next week. Next week is going to be so much fun. I have a special guest coming on. His name is Mikey Adhoot, and he is one of the founders of Habit Nest. And he'll be joining me in studio to discuss how he has found out for himself that creating a life of habit and habit change has been transformational. So I can't wait to see you guys there. Have fun with the assignment from today in looking into your habits and seeing where their origins are. Same time, same place. See you then. I want to sincerely thank you and appreciate you today for showing up here on Flip the Switch. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a training session in your mindset mastery, leveling up your business success. And be a good friend. Share this episode with a fellow business builder. I'll see you next week, same time, same place.